Welcome to the Theology of Business podcast, where marketplace Christians explore God's will and ways for business. This show features conversations with today's Christ-centered business leaders who are representing Christ faithfully in the business world. I'm your host, Darren Shear, and if you want to make your work, leadership, and company's culture more Christ-centered, you've come to the right place. On this episode, we're joined by Brian Slipka. Brian is the founder and leader of True North. Throughout his career as a senior executive, he began investing in numerous independent operating companies, eventually forming today's True North Equity Partners, where he serves as chairman and CEO. And today, the combined family of nearly 30 independently owned small businesses has revenues in excess of $250 million. Brian's experience includes building startups, buying existing businesses, selling and exiting businesses, and angel investments in numerous companies. And he has a new book, Win Some: 5 Proven Life Strategies to Win in Relationships. It's a fun and educational baseball fable about relationships. And fun fact, he's a diehard University of Minnesota Golden Gophers fan, and actually has a, what do you call it? What is the fan wagon called?
Oh, we have a fan van, which is actually what we like to call version 2.0. It's our second fan van. And so, yeah, it's been a lot of fun tailgating with and building in relationship through the shared experience of tailgating has been a pretty good thing. It's been great. Awesome.
Well, and you guys still have a great wrestling program up there?
We do. In fact, Brendan, the head coach, he's been to our True North office before. We've a couple of times, and we actually it's a great program. Frankly, a lot of Christ-centered foundational elements exist with Brendan's program, and it's just really cool to see. And the coaching staff are wonderful human beings, and so and they're still a very strong program. Although with NIL, it's created a whole different dynamic, and so they're fighting that fight, as you can imagine, in the brave new world of college sports, and certainly Gopher Wrestling is one of them that's trying to stay relevant, stay competitive, and stay a top 20 program.
Yeah. A lot of those college athletes nowadays with the NIL need to get a hold of some of these biblical business principles with all the money and advertising, and they're really kind of building amazing personal brands and businesses even in college. It's awesome.
Yeah,
Brian, I'm really excited to have you on the Theology of Business podcast today. When did you first realize God wanted to be involved in your work in business?
Well, I feel like throughout my entire life and career, I grew up in a Christian household. My mom was a Christian education director. My dad ran a small business, was a retired Army colonel in the U.S. Army. By the time I was born, he was still in the National Guard, but he was out of the day-to-day. But he ran a small light manufacturing business, not very big at the time, at least not early in my life. But it ended up growing. But both of them were very steady, Christ-centered influences in my life, and yet I went off to a public college, University of Minnesota, very secular. I had my ups and downs, but I always had a Christ-centered foundation. And as I'm sure a lot of us can relate as business leaders, as well as just humanity itself, all of us, there's a difference between knowing what Christ did for us and kind of knowing who he is and actually being in relationship with him. Mm. And so for me, my college years were the manifestation of that, of actually building a relationship. But then you get into the professional realm of work, right? And you start chasing things that are good and to serve and glorify God in many respects. But there's selfish ambition involved. And again, not all that's bad, but if harnessed improperly, can lead to some severe dysfunction from both a temporal and eternal perspective. And so to really kind of come to answer your question, for me, I had some success in my 20s in the world of business and into my 30s. And my dad died of cancer back in 2013. And really the story begins there. I I'd given my life to Christ, and surrender that. But admittedly, there was a dimmer switch going on in life because I was pursuing temporal, earthly treasures and earthly pursuits that, again, were for the right reasons, to provide for my family, to be able to give and give generously, all of those things. But when my dad was on his deathbed, and I was visiting him one day over lunch, and he was in at home hospice, and his eyes were becoming jaundiced, and he was starting to getting prepared to move into an eternal realm. And by the way, he was very comfortable with that, and that's a whole nother story. Just his degree of comfort around it. But I got to his house over lunch, and I was complaining about what was going on at work that day. And I was leading a business unit, a sales team, and traveling a lot and all that. And I was complaining though, and he expressed to me, he stopped me about face, Darren. And he's like, Brian, what on earth are you chasing? I mean, seriously, what on earth are you chasing? Now, again, he was about to leave the earthly realm. But he was challenging me, to really focus on what really mattered most. And specifically, I was complaining about work, right? And so specifically, he's like, Brian, you got a great life, you got a great wife, you got great kids, you love the Lord. That's all great, but like, what are you pursuing? What are you chasing? Like, what on earth are you chasing? Because I can tell you right now, like, you got a lot going on for you, and you have a great witness, but use it. And so that was a bit of a 2x4, and that's what really began the journey of what became the True North family of companies. And it wasn't but a year later that I really felt called to start buying small businesses. And then a few years later, I was able to quit the day job. And as the businesses grew in number and size and scope and required more leadership and dedicated leadership, and then that's what has become the True North family of businesses, which, as you stated earlier, a lot of employees, a lot of people, a lot of businesses, different P&Ls, and a lot of different locations, and a lot of revenue. But it's all with a unique perspective and focus that's different than most business leaders in this world.
Wow. My dad also passed away just a couple of years from COVID complications. But you and I are both so fortunate to have a godly father that understood what life was really all about. I mean, what an incredible legacy. And it sounds like it really impacted the trajectory of your life, those words that he spoke to you. What's one of your favorite stories that illustrates the impact being made by your company from that point forward, when you really begin to dial in, what is it that I'm pursuing in life?
Well, there's a couple of examples. Some are more tactical, or more just being able to help folks in an earthly realm, and then also more really focused on having impact and influence as a business leader, but as a family of companies from a kingdom perspective, and really being an example that work is a form of worship, right? And that I really take that seriously. So the first story is just a business owner. One of the businesses we bought, it was two widows. They were their sister-in-laws. Their husbands were both were brothers, and were tragically killed in a car accident together. And what happened is they were partners in this business. The businesses were left to the widows, and they were trying to run the businesses as best they could. And so being able to come alongside them and be a steward of what their husbands had created, and like really shepherding the husband's legacy and what they desired to carry forward into the future was extremely impactful and profoundly really created an environment of the fulfillment for our whole family of companies and our culture, right? But so that's one just very practical story, how we come alongside business owners. We try to steward the American small business, right? I tell people all the time, this isn't really a faith thing. This is just a brutal American thing. The American small business is somewhat under attack. It's somewhat under neglect, right? It drives over 40% of the GDP. Some say as high as 48% of the GDP here in this country, and yet, everything from government to a lot of focus areas to the media typically don't spend a lot of time in the American small business. And if they do, it's like some retail shop that's in some like tourist town, right? I mean, well, that's not the American small business. The American small business is the Joe lunch pail manufacturer that has 25 employees and they grind every day, right? And it's so important for us to be a steward of that. So part of what True North's mission is to be a steward of the American small business. But the other thing that's so important about that is that we can be a witness to from a leadership standpoint on how we conduct ourselves and what as my dad asked me, what are we chasing? And that's to have impact and influence to glorify God. And so in the world of small business, it's still a very fertile ground to be able to have that impact and influence and come alongside folks. So one of my other stories is an example where one of the leaders of a business we acquired, and he was a leader of, sometimes it flexed up and down, but it was oftentimes it was over 100 people. And to be able to come alongside, buy the business, put him in a role of leadership to actually run the company. Before he was more of a lieutenant. Now we empowered him to run a company and then to teach him biblical principles of how to lead and to see how that's flourished, not only in the form of business success, but in life success for him and his family. Like to me, like that fills my cup.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes me want to get to work every morning. It makes me race for Monday morning and kind of be bummed when Friday afternoon arrives. And I don't know if a lot of folks in America can say that right now. And so I just firmly believe that, our witness through our work is the ultimate form of worship. And that's what gets me going every day.
Awesome. Brian, what's one of the business practices that helps you and the culture of your company reflect the character and ways of God?
Well, there's a lot of different ways to do it. And I want to first disclaim that I fall short every day too. Like, I mean, I'd be lying to your listeners and to the audience if I was saying I bat 1,000, because I don't. Like I'm fallible. Our sin nature persists no matter how sanctified we are and how close we grow to Him every day through our prayer life, through all the different folks we associate ourselves that help us grow closer to Him. We still fall short, and so I think part of that is part of the answer, right? Is this vulnerability? Our leadership is one that comes from an acceptance of that we're vulnerable and that we are sinners and we're fallible, and to and coming at it from that purview and that narrative, as opposed to a leadership style where like thou shalt. It's more like, hey, I'm fallible, you're fallible. We're how now shall we live, right? As Chuck Colson, one of his books was titled. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest things is starting from that point, and then it's a little bit of a C.S. Lewis. It's not thinking less of yourself. It's just thinking about yourself less. And that's this notion of surrendering selfish ambition. So in a business sense, we really try to instill a culture of, hey, it's not about me. It's not about Brian Slipka driving as much profit as possible so he can line his pockets or my partner's pockets or whatever the case may be. It's about what do we need to do to make the situation better for all, right? And it's surrendering our selfish ambition, but still being very ambitious. And so that's a cultural trait that we emphasize in all the different businesses, whether it be my investment bank and Main Street business brokerage, where we have a higher percentage of collaboration than any of our industry peers. Like that's a big deal to me. Like I actually measure our success based on our degree of collaboration amongst our team and with others in the marketplace, as I do with the actual P&L, right?
How do you measure that?
Well, I mean, in that specific world, we measure it by frankly the number of folks that are touching the deal and that are getting compensated on it. So it's not like a lot of investment bankers try to hog deals, right? Like we want to control every element of it because we get the biggest commission that way, or we get the biggest fee, or whatever the structure might be. In our world, it's like we measure success by the degree of folks that we've collaborated with to ultimately ensure the success of the client. And I think that's a different unit of measurement. But because of that, we've grown like crazy. We've done more transactions than our peers. And overall, the revenue also drifts in the form of success and higher revenues as well. But we're basing it off of the pursuit of collaboration and the pursuit of working as a team, as opposed to the pursuit of just pure revenue and profit.
Yeah. So what does that point of decision look like when you're having to decide, are we going to be collaborative or are we going to just, try to pad our wallets?
Well, I think it comes down to being, again, surrendering selfish ambition and being being a true servant leader. So you look at the parables of Jesus and the teachings of Jesus, and you look at how he was so winsome and how he would come alongside, his different examples, and parables that he would speak of, right? In all those situations, it was somebody who surrendered maybe selfish ambition, but was ambitious in the form of helping the person that they were involved with. So in a business sense, you take a deal or a transaction or something where we're trying to win the deal, right? And if we take a heart of what's our highest and best use to serve the customer and to have success for them. And we don't look at our success. We look at how do we make sure that they're successful. And I know that might sound a little cliche for the listener, and if you're a business owner listening to this, but I'm just saying, like, we all have examples of this where we are met with, okay, I can make a lot more money if I just do it this way. We eliminate displaced energy, we reduce risk, and we create actually maximum efficiency. In a business sense, that's like check, 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 check. Let's do that, right? But are we truly surrendering selfish ambition there? And are we truly creating an environment where our culture can thrive and grow and we can be a witness to other business leaders? Because sometimes that may actually be more disruptive. It may be a little bit more harder work. It may have a little bit less efficiency, and less revenue and profit. But it sets us up for success with the folks that we're serving. And over time, that actually manifests itself into more transactions, more business, and it actually comes back right back around. But you do it for the benefit of the other person, not yourself.
Yeah. What's an example of a time where you really could have chosen a different path that might have been better for you, but it wasn't better for the group? It wasn't better for the collaborative relationships?
Well, I think of a very personal scenario with some businesses that one business in particular that I own. And at the time I owned 100% of it. And that was by far the most preferred route, right? And now I'm getting into equity conversation, right? But in that case, I owned the business fully. But I also realized that for us to grow and for us to serve the client in the maximum way, I was going to have to surrender some of that in order to not only grow the business for my benefit, but more importantly to really meet a competitive headwind that we were faced up against, and really bring others into the fold for the greater good. And so what that meant now if you're a business owner, a lot of times you might be like, okay, well, Brian, so you sell some equity in order to grow it. How is that surrendering selfish ambition? Well, in that case, what I did is I literally gave equity to others, and without any strings attached, in order for us all to be successful. And I think some may say that isn't being a good steward of business ownership or equity, but in that particular instance, that was absolutely the right surrender that I needed to make. Right. So every situation is a little bit different, but that's the one that comes top of mind because that was such a sacrifice for me. And then since that time, the business has flourished. And there's moments where my selfish ambition gets the best of me, where I'm like, God, man, if I would have just kept that, but God, the way God works, it's God's timing, not our own. And there wouldn't have been what exists today if there hadn't been that sacrifice that I had made.
Is there another story you could tell of a time when you really saw God's hand at work in your company?
Well, this is going to be a little bit different than what most listeners are probably used to, but I believe God's hand is in things the most when I'm struggling, and I mean that because I see how God's tempering me through the adverse conditions or the adversity or toil. specifically, I'll give you an example. Like right now, one of our industry sectors that we're heavily invested in is really under a lot of duress and stress. And industry-wide profits are down like 75, 80%. Revenues are down, 40, 50%. Expenses are up. There's headwinds that are beyond any of the business owners' control in the industry, and it's been really, really tough. But I'm telling you, like, God's hand is in that, because I look at how He's tempered myself as well as my other leaders to decision a little bit differently, to seek Him first, not our own understanding, right? To seek Him in all circumstances, and not let our circumstances affect our desire to seek Him, right? And our willingness to seek Him and our surrender to Him every day. And so I do consider it pure joy when I think about the stress that has been placed on some of our businesses, and other examples previously where there's been some stresses, where that is actually God's favor more than the favor of like exultant business success or profit. And I'm just telling you, that's a little bit different way of looking at things from an earthly perspective. But boy, I can see the fruit of it. The measurement of fruit, the people that we've been able to impact and influence, because they see how we're handling the adverse conditions and the toil with integrity, with character, with recognition of grinding through it and stepping up and forcing ourselves to become better stewards of our resources. I mean, wow. I mean, how powerful is that? Like, thank you, Lord, like, for giving me this. And I think that's a little bit of an inverted knee-jerk way of thinking about it, but boy, oh boy, that what a powerful example of God's love of us to temper us through all circumstances. I could have told you some stories about some meteoric success we've had with some of the other businesses, but I'm telling you, Darren, I haven't learned, and I don't learn as much through those situations, because all that does is perpetuate this notion of, hey, thank you, Lord, look what I did. You can't help but have the human condition allow you to go there, and so anyway, I'm just telling you, like, the tempering, the stress adverse conditions are the ones where you learn, grow and seek Him and cling to Him more, and that's intentional by our Lord. So that's just a few examples. I got the whole gamut.
Yeah, that's really good. And that, the moments of lack, the moments of struggle and distress, that's what part of the context inspired Paul to say, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So it wasn't just, I can go get a gold medal, through Christ who strengthens me, or I can make this deal happen or whatever. It was, I can endure through suffering. I can endure through hard times through Christ who strengthens me. And that's,
Amen.
I mean, and that's the points where your team members, they see, okay, something's different. Because it's in those moments where we really kind of default to self, right? And just our own strength. And what can I do to get myself out of this jam, right?
Yeah. I mean, I have examples for myself where under adverse conditions, let's face it, to your point, when we're all backed into a corner, no matter what the situation might be, it might be, with a colleague where, you guys disagree on a topic and you feel like you're backed into a corner. How do you respond? Do you come out fighting and swinging and defensive? And, because I'll be honest, I mean, the book that I just wrote, Winsome, I'm a mild version of the protagonist, and that's what he would do, and that's what I still do it to this day. And so when I say the tempering of our Lord through our suffering or through these adverse conditions, it is what, as Paul wrote in a Roman prison, that it's truly a blessing, and that we can do all things through that. But it's only through that. There's this notion of what's next. I've gotten a chance to work alongside Tony Dungy with some ministry efforts that we do up in Minneapolis every year. And Tony is of such profound wisdom. And one of the things, in a text chain we had was around some stuff that we were all going through around, some stresses and adverse conditions that we were faced up against. And I think Tony made the comment somewhere along the lines of like, this is part of the process in the Beatitudes, the Sermon on the Mount, right? I mean, like we knew that like this is what's promised to us. We're gonna have some pushback or adversity or suffering as a result of it. So that we should actually celebrate that. As
Yes.
weird as that sounds. And from a business perspective, in the world of business, it's even more shall I say, strange or countercultural, because we're measured by being in the black by a certain percentage every year, or showing year over year growth, or the different KPIs. But I'm just here to challenge everybody. What KPIs are you chasing? It's like my dad asked me, like, what KPIs are you chasing? Are you chasing the people that you're, the number of folks that you can impact and influence to then go forth and honor and glorify the Lord in a high character, high integrity way in the world of business, and have that be the ultimate form of worship and witnessing? Or are you just chasing, black marks on a white sheet of paper? Oh, profit grew, revenue grew, my W-2 grew, or my income grew, and I'm going to compartmentalize that in my business and then go to church on Sunday. Like I challenge the listener to really think about that. Where do you stand in that? Because if it's not the key ingredient to the piece of pie that we call life, and it's just a piece of the pie, you really got to self-reflect.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And that selfish ambition, it's really an effort to just kind of clothe ourselves with the fig leaves of and the filthy rags of self-righteousness, and trying to put ourselves in right standing with some sort of ideal apart from Christ, as opposed to, let me just stand in my state of imputed righteousness in Christ, where I don't have to earn anything, I don't have to add anything to it, and it's just a free gift. But business is it can be a real trap, for those of us who are achievement, success oriented.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's so true. And it's crazy. Again, I would think a lot of the listeners here with you, I know exactly what you're saying and can relate empathetically to what you're saying. And I would just challenge all of us. And by the way, I say us, myself included, because I will be the first to admit I don't have it figured out. Like I am so fallible, and every day it's like, Lord, help me get out of my own way to seek your wisdom and counsel, and to have truly a Christ-centered lens through all of my decision-making, all of my leading, and all of my pursuits. And it's a daily prayer. It's a minute by minute prayer sometimes, Darren. I mean, and this notion of surrender and selfish ambition. I at the prayer I gave the keynote at a prayer breakfast here in a city here in the Twin Cities this past May. And one of the things I talked about is like the thing about surrender and selfish ambition. If you're having a hard time grasping the concept of surrender and selfish ambition, I would challenge, just look at it logically. Selfish ambition doesn't scale. I mean, it just doesn't scale, and you got to really acknowledge that it exists. You got to you got to rewire your brain. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do around surrender and selfish ambition. But if you look at it from a truly logical standpoint, there's three reasons why it doesn't. I'll tell you. Selfish ambition doesn't scale. The first thing is it impairs your ability to self-reflect. I mean, because think about it. Because if you're all about your own selfish ambition, you're never self-reflecting, because you're always focusing on what's in it for me, instead of like, man, did I handle that situation well, or could I have done that better, or how am I with that relationship? So like literally, you're so self-centered, and selfish ambition creates self-centeredness, not necessarily selfishness, but self-centeredness, to where you aren't self-reflecting inward. It's always about like, what do I want to achieve? Mm-hmm. So that part doesn't scale. The other thing that I would say it doesn't scale is you can't multiply it, because if it's self-centeredness, you can't create a disciple to go make other disciples. Mm-hmm. If Jesus was self-centered, his 12 disciples, when he left this world, it would have ended with that. They would have just been like, and Jesus, that was who they were honoring and glorifying and worshiping, right? But just look at it from a business perspective. He created a framework for them to go then create more disciples. And so I just think that that's super important as well. And then like The third thing is that it just limits your ability to trust. If you have selfish ambition, you aren't able to surrender it, you're going to always ultimately, when you go through relationships throughout life, you're going to have trust issues that emerge because you're going to always be focused on yourself. So
That's right.
and I can talk about all those a lot more, but I think it's important to bring it up to the listener about those three areas. I mean, it's just super powerful for me, and it's helped me as I've tried to get better as a leader, humbly, and as I've tried to just be more effective, and be more Christ-like.
And that's a lot of the lessons that readers are going to walk away with from this baseball parable, Win Some, 5 Proven Life Strategies to Win in Relationships. What do you want to say to our listeners about how they can benefit from this book?
Well, I would encourage, it's a fable, right? It's a relational fable. This is about 140 pages. It's something you can knock out in a couple hours. Our audio version is a great way to listen to it too. I had Jeff Gould, America's Storyteller, read that, and he did an unbelievable job, far better than I would have been able to do as a storyteller. But the point to the listener would be that, if when you think about your relationships with your marriage, with your kids, with maybe with your siblings or other relatives, or colleagues at work, peers at work, subordinates, lieutenants, whatever it may be, your colleagues at work, or friends for that matter. No matter what walk in life you're in, how are you handling your relational connections, and how are you building long-term relational success? And so the Win Some book really calls out the five tool framework, we call it. And in a baseball sense, and I'll let the reader kind of you got to read the book to get into some of the more details. But the 5 tool framework is you got to grab your bat. So grab your bat of life, right? If you don't grab your bat, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? You got to grab your bat and be looking out in the field. Okay, it's what's the score? Am I mentally prepared to step into the batter's box? And then step 2 is you got to go on the on deck circle. Okay, now you're on the field. You're actually on the field. You aren't still in the game, but you're on the field. Now you got to really be looking like, how can I help my team? So you're surrendering your selfish desires, and you're looking at the situation. Oh, it's 4-4 in the bottom of the 8th inning, and there's a runner on second, and I'm about to step up to the plate. What am I going to do? And that's number 3, at bat. So now you're at bat. So now you've prepared yourself to surrender selfish ambition. Now you actually surrender it. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now it's like, Lord, use me how you need to in this world, right? So and throughout the book, we're providing examples in a real life way as well. So it's not just baseball, right? But in the world of baseball, the analogy is so powerful. I mean, you're at bat. Well, your goal ultimately is to get to do step 4, which is to drive in runs for your team, not yourself, for your team. So that may be, if as a husband or a wife, is basically how are you as a spouse, right? I mean, are you focused on the marriage, or are you focused on yourself? How are you as a parent? Are you focused on yourself, or are you focused on how you are as a family, right? As a team member, as a leader of a company, you focused on just what's in it for me as the leader, and how can I win in this, or how can my entire company win in this, right? And so it's really profound as you get through it. And then number 5 is just after you're driving runs, getting back in the batter's box. And that's the humility element of, like, we've never arrived. We never have it all figured out. Myself included. I'm stepping in the batter's box every day in the game of life of, like, man, I could have handled that situation better. Or, man, my daughter was only home for like 5 minutes because she's so busy now as a young adult. And man, I could have handled that better. And self-reflect. So getting back in the batter's box, constant form of self-reflection, I think are all elements. And of course, the book dives into more examples through a story, and how to achieve that.
Yes. Wow. Well, it sounds like it's a powerful parable, fable about confronting this enemy of selfish ambition. And I love what the Apostle Paul said. Do nothing from selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility, consider others more important than yourselves. I mean, we're sabotaging ourselves and our companies by just making it all about us. And you've done a great job. I haven't read the entire thing, read portions of the book, as I said, sitting at the lake yesterday. But it's very well written. You guys are going to love this. tnfamilyfoundation.org is the website, as in True North familyfoundation.org. And people can get this book, Win Some, 5 Proven Life Strategies to Win in Relationships, at Amazon and probably other places as well. Brian, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing parts of your journey and wisdom with us today. We're better for it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I just want to say, like, your statement from Paul is so true. To surrender that selfish ambition, and then I would even go so farther for any business owner listening. That vain conceit is also something that daily hits me. Like, how am I surrendering that element as well? And it's just so powerful. So hopefully the listener got something out of our time together.
I know I did. Awesome. Thanks again, Brian.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Theology of Business podcast. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and tune in for the next episode as we continue exploring God's will and ways for business.